Howdy, folks. Wow, another week. Well, every week is another week, you know? Don't I get burnt out? That's right. This week, our topic is physician burnout, which is a real issue in this world. However, burnout doesn't just apply to physicians. It applies to every job and every career. But because it is very, very commonly discussed in medicine, and it's certainly something that I want you to keep in mind if you are interested in going into medicine, we're gonna cover it this week. Though I do think this topic and the discussion is going to be very useful and practical for almost all jobs out there. So, let's go! Howdy, folks. This is Dr. Bao. Yeah! The goal of this channel is to make it useful for those of you who might be interested in learning more about a doctor's life. You could be a student, a resident, a fellow, an attending, a parent, or someone who simply loves to information overload yourself.
Seriously.
Although I do work and am affiliated with some hospitals and med school, what I say does not represent the opinion of any entity except myself. Please like or dislike, hopefully not dislike, subscribe, comment, share, and press that bell icon.
Great.
So let's start by defining burnout. Burnout is a form of extreme fatigue caused by constantly feeling swamped. Burnout can happen slowly over time, or it can happen super fast, especially after a traumatic event, such as a lawsuit, a devastating medical error, or even something in our personal world, like the death of a family member or friend, or something super stressful. Per research, 1 in every 3 physicians is experiencing burnout at any given time. Per a more recent survey in 2015, about 46% of physicians experience burnout. The top 5 specialties with the highest burnout rates, which are all over 50%, are number 1, emergency medicine. Number 2, critical care. Number 3, OBGYN. Number 4, infectious disease. And number 5, family medicine. The top 6 specialties, and I'm saying 6 instead of 5 because number 5 and 6, they tie each other. But the top 6 specialties with the lowest burnout rates, which are all below 40%, are number 1, public health / preventive medicine. Number 2, dermatology. Number 3, pathology. Number 4, oncology. Number 5, orthopedics. And number 6, ENT. Before I go into more details, let's talk about why we want to prevent or address burnout. Studies have shown that physician burnouts lower patient satisfaction and care quality, so it affects us and it affects the patients. In addition, it also causes higher medical error rates and malpractice risk, and it leads to higher physician and staff turnover rates, which affects the healthcare system in addition to us and patients. Finally, physician burnout is associated with physician alcohol and drug abuse or addiction, and is actually associated with physician suicide. Super important. That's why we want to address or prevent physician burnout if we can. So, what causes physician burnout? There are multiple factors and reasons and causes. Number 1, it has to do with the nature of our job pertaining to patient care. Like we mentioned before, our job as physicians in general is high stress. We deal with sick, scared, emotionally damaged, and dying folks. Sometimes it's emotionally draining, as mentioned in previous episodes. And if you never watched my previous episodes, it's on you, man. But as physicians, generally speaking, we carry great responsibility. And yet, oftentimes, we have very little control of what happens. Meaning that, in other words, even if we perform the best care, not just following the standard of care, there are patients who are bound to have not so good outcomes or even die. Again, it's very stressful and sometimes it can be very draining. So that's first cause. Second, it has to do with the nature of our job pertaining to us physicians as individuals. And what I mean by that is some of the things that we talked about before, including long hours, long training, being on call, being away, sometimes less than desirable pay relative to our job duties and obligations, and office politics, especially with our bosses. I don't know if you all know this or not, but research has shown a direct relationship between the quality of our boss and our job satisfaction level. So that's number 2. The third cause has to do with conflicts arising from our personal space. For example, arguments with spouse, which if it's my case, it's always my fault. Mushi is never at fault. Or it could be financial stress, being poor and broke from medical school tuition, low residency pay, or it could be anything within our family or with friends that has a negative impact on our mental health. And the last cause, which is number 4 for physician burnout, is our personality adapted from our education and training, ironically, including our tendency as physicians that we have to do everything on our own. We have to be perfect. We have to be workaholic, and we cannot show any weaknesses. So those are the 4 causes for physician burnout. There are others according to other studies, but I think these are the 4 main ones. Now, the first thing that we need to do in order to prevent or intervene on physician burnout is to actually recognize it. Because let's face it, we can't really solve a problem until we recognize that there is a problem. So for physician burnout, these are the 3 hallmark symptoms. Number 1, you feel exhausted. And by that, I mean physically, emotionally, and spiritually. You just feel that you have no energy. Number 2, you feel depersonalized. This is also known as compassion fatigue. In this case, you might become cynical, sarcastic, and you probably feel the need to vent about your job, such as about your colleagues, bosses, and your patients. And at some point, you probably just feel like you don't care anymore. That's number 2. And the third symptom is that you feel you are inefficient, ineffective, or inefficacious. In this case, you start doubting yourself, you start doubting your work. You often ask, what's the point? Or you often feel, what I do won't make a difference. Of note, the last symptom or feeling happens in more female physicians than male physicians, meaning that even if we are burnt out, male physicians generally don't doubt themselves or their work, versus our female colleagues tend to do so more likely when they are burnt out. I think it's important to recognize that when we stop looking for adventure, challenge, and enjoyment in our work, and we're simply in survival mode, meaning we're just thinking that I just want to get done and go home, nothing else, we should probably be careful about burnout, as I think that's a pretty universal sign prior to having all 3 hallmark symptoms. Now, how do we intervene physician burnout, or when we are burnt out? There is a lot of studies out there on this, and so I am going to give what I think is the most important concepts. Number 1, I think generally speaking, doing the same thing over and over will not produce a different result. So if we are burnt out, or if we don't like the situation we are in, we likely need to do some changes, including possibly switching jobs. Though every job has its own stressors, as we all know. We might need to change our personality, developed or adapted, as previously mentioned, through education and training. Meaning, we might need to stop being so workaholic. We might need to stop being so perfect. We might need to stop doing everything on our own and start having trust in others, so that some of our work can be completed by others and we don't end up micromanaging everyone. And or we might need to change the way we feel that we are superheroes, in terms of we don't have any weaknesses, and we might need to start admitting that, hey, I also have limits and there are certain things I cannot do. And that brings us to a very good point, is that one of the changes might be that maybe we need to start setting boundaries, so our work schedule doesn't always create conflicts with our personal or family lives. And it might mean that sometimes we really need to learn how to say no. When, for example, somebody asks us to do an extra shift or to work overtime, those are the changes that we might need to make. Number 2, healthy lifestyle modifications. What I mean by that is, at least we need to eat healthy and exercise. Ironically, this is what we tell our patients all the time, but something super hard to do through our training because of work schedule, long hours and stuff. And if you don't know what a healthy diet is, Mushi and I actually did a clip on this before, so take a look. Number 3 is we should try to develop some kind of hobbies, because they create a better work-life balance, or we can maintain our hobbies. I'm not gonna lie, some of my colleagues have very weird hobbies. I think as long as it reduces your stress level, which is one of the key things to prevent burnout, I think that's fine, as long as it doesn't affect others. Lastly, there are 3 groups of people that I would encourage folks to connect with in order to intervene or prevent physician burnout or burnout in general. 3 groups are yourself, your family/friends, and your mentors. By connecting with ourselves, I think we should often self-reflect and ask, what was the reason that I came into medicine? What is the purpose? And is that purpose still the same? Should it be the same? I think having a higher goal, having a purpose when doing something really helps us to overcome some of the daily, almost boring stuff, so that it helps us to see that what we do, even though on a daily basis might be a little boring, might be a little bit tasteless, but there is a higher goal that we are serving. So I think connecting with ourselves on a constant basis, knowing what our goals and purpose are, I think that's very important, both on a therapeutic and prophylactic basis for physician burnout. The second group of people is our family and friends. I do want to note that I think having a supportive family, and I can speak from experience that throughout my education and training, Mushi has been nothing but supportive, patient, and understanding. I've been very blessed to have a spouse like Mushi. Having said that, I also think that at times during my education and early training, I somewhat abused that, meaning that after a while, I started taking things for granted. I think our family and friends are there to support us. They are there to hear us out, but they are not professional folks who are responsible for our emotional damage or high stress. They are an outlet at times, but that's not their responsibility. So even though I'm encouraging all of us to stay connected or connect more with our family and friends, I don't mean to dump stuff on them. I mean having a meaningful connection and communication with our family and friends. And I think that's gonna do us way better in the long run. Number 3 that I mentioned was to connect with mentors. And by mentors, it can be in every aspect. But the ones I want to emphasize would be mentors at work. These are the people who can help us to get to the next level, or at least help us to figure out how we can get to the next level, which is very important because I think if we have a goal, we need to try to reach that goal in an efficient manner. And mentors can do that. They've been there, they've done that. I think having career mentors and really be connected with them, I think that is a super important way to prevent physician burnout and also to treat physician burnout. So those are the 3 types of folks that I would encourage everyone to be more connected with in order to prevent, and if we need to, treat physician burnout. Finally, I think it's a good mentality, having more appreciation for everything, including ourselves. I think by appreciating our patients, our family, our friends, our colleagues, our bosses, and ourselves more, I think everything becomes less routine. If you are a patient or the general public watching this, I think expressing your appreciation to folks in medicine, not just doctors, but nursing staff, therapists, and other healthcare workers, I think that's gonna go a long way. None of us came into medicine because we wanted your appreciation. At least I don't think that was the initial intention. I think most of us came into medicine, and this includes other healthcare workers, because we wanted to improve our work, to make a difference in people's lives. But then, you know, higher purpose, a lot of times, it gets worn out because of mundane, cumbersome daily activities and routines. But every time, at least for me and for a lot of my colleagues, every time we hear a sincere thank you from patients and families, I think we're always appreciative of that. And it reminds us that, hey, I am really doing something special for our world. If you have questions about being a doctor or medicine in general, leave a comment. Eventually, I will get back to you. For now, best of luck.